we have a beautiful brisket, and there's the hang. Hey everybody, it's Danielle Bennett, also known as Diva Q, and today I'm finally getting to do a brisket. I love brisket. I competed in brisket for many years, got a couple of beautiful, shiny, perfect 180 scores in brisket, and one of the things is I'm gonna share with you today a really great home recipe. So sharing something I actually do at home is really meaningful to me because this is the reality of how I trim a brisket at home, what I do with the trimmings, how I cook it, how I season it. This is my backyard barbecue brisket recipe. A brisket is comprised of two separate muscles. We've got this beautiful flat, that's where the leaner slices come from, and then we've got the point, which is actually where the concentration of the fat is on this end. And together, if they're cooked correctly, it's a beautiful thing. Cook them wrong, and it's shoe leather. So it's really important to do some trimming, to do some seasoning, and to have an amazing grill to cook on as well. Here on the top, we've got some silver skin, we've got some pockets of fat, we've got some harder pockets of fat on the brisket itself, and they're not going to render. You can cook it for 15 hours, it's still not going to render. So one of the things I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually enable a lot of this rub to get in the surface of the brisket so that we can have beautiful, big, flavorful slices, okay? Now, I've got my sharp knife, I've got my brisket, it's ice cold. It's always a really good idea to trim brisket when it's super cold. It's a lot easier to trim the fat off of meat when it's cold versus room temperature, okay? So, first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take off all of the surface silver skin and fat. You never wanna go in on an angle with a knife. You wanna hold the knife nice and flat. You wanna prop the brisket up in your hand underneath because it just makes it a lot easier on you instead of trying to gouge it out. Take your knife, slowly and consistently come across the top and take nice, thin slices of that fat off, just like that. Now, what this was doing was protecting the meat on the top, but it's also preventing us from getting rub in there. So I'm gonna be trimming all of this top surface fat from the top of this brisket in order for us to get that beautiful bark built on the top, okay? If you've got these little thin pieces of silver skin, you wanna take the tip of the knife, just the very tip of the knife, dig it underneath so you get a nice thin line, and take your time with the brisket, okay? You're gonna hold it nice and flat, right all the way down. We're gonna continue to do this on all of our sections, just like this. All right, I think this whole section's just about done. Taking that out. It's really important that we pay attention to the grains on brisket because once this has gone on the grill and we've cooked it for many, many hours, we're gonna wanna cut this flat against the grain. Once it's covered in bark, it's really hard to determine where that protein strands are going. So take your knife, take a little sacrificial triangular cut right off the end. And here's why. Once this is cooked, one of the things we know is that my knife is gonna have to start there. Now, you don't have to do this, but it's a good idea for your first couple of briskets before you get used to the meat itself to do this. Now I'm gonna go and continue on trimming the rest of this top surface fat. Any little hangers on, get rid of them. A little more of that silver skin, get it gone. Now here's something I'm gonna do, and it's not gonna be very popular, okay? Right now, we have a beautiful thick section of flat here. We have an extremely thin section of flat here. My goal when I cook brisket is to have a luscious, moist, delicious barbecue slice all the way across. And right now, this section here is gonna be done a lot sooner than this thicker section over here. All right, I don't wanna get any hate mail about this. I'm gonna cut off that entire thin section. Here's why. By squaring up the brisket, making it more like a nice rectangle, you're gonna have a more consistent thickness on both sides of the brisket. When you have a consistent thickness all the way across, gravity is going to be in your favor, distribution of moisture is going to be in your favor, and this is going to give you the opportunity to have a much better end product. Briskets are cut halfway by hand and halfway by machine. So this lovely luscious section, this is actually the hand cut side. This side over here, and you'll notice this on every brisket, and this one's a hefty one. It's got a grayish tone to it. It's actually very rough on the surface. You can cook it that way, but it's gonna be very rough for the mouth. What I prefer to do is actually do a cut all the way through. So I'm gonna start at the very top of the brisket, and I'm gonna get rid of that rough section. There we go. A couple more little sections of fat. Now you'll also notice on a lot of briskets, there is sometimes a dividing line, and this one has one. And you'll notice that the fat actually goes into a V formation at the top of the flat itself. I would highly recommend you not dig this out because it'll literally dig a V into your brisket. So instead of digging it out, take your knife once again, parallel to the brisket, and just flatten it out as much as possible. Now let's take care of the other bits of fat. At the end here, you'll notice a very thick part of fat. It's hard as a rock and it doesn't render. It's not the type of fat that renders. On this side, same thing. It's the type of fat that does not render. So we want to get rid of some of that fat. The reason is that it's covering up the top of the point. And one of the key things for me is getting more bark, more wood-fired smoke on the top of the point. So we're actually going to release this entire part of the muscle to enable us to build better bark and better flavor. So right from the very top, you want to take a nice little slice. You want to pay attention, pull it back, then take the tip of the knife and just keep cutting down until you see protein. Once you see protein, stop, pull it apart, just like that, and then start taking big chunks of fat out. Magically, as you could see, just by taking that one chunk out, we can now see the point that was right underneath. It was being covered by all that hard fat that doesn't render. And we want to do that all the way around. On this side, once again, pull that hard fat back until you get to protein, turn your knife, and pull it away from the brisket. We're literally creating a shelf around the end of the brisket to enable all of that beautiful meat to actually get that smoke and all of the rub flavors. And we're going to continue on over here. Once again, just a reminder, this is the stuff that does not render. We're going to take out some hard edges. I'm going to take my knife, I'm going to dive in right here in between the point and the flat, dig out a triangle of that fat because it's not going to render. I'm going to take out some silver skin on the side here and here, a little hard fat. All right, my brisket is trimmed. If you're wondering, I don't trim any of this at the bottom. Typically, I don't need to. It's going on a Traeger. One of the benefits of going on a Traeger is we've got all indirect heat. I'm gonna make sure that the flat kind of lays nice and flat, okay? I'm gonna make sure it doesn't have any valleys. And when I say valleys, you don't wanna see a big opportunity for it to pool in the middle of liquid as it cooks. You wanna make sure that it's sloped ever so gently so that any excess liquid doesn't pool on the brisket itself. Because if it pools on the brisket, then you're just gonna get a sludgy surface versus that delicious bark we all love about barbecue. All right, so our brisket is completely trimmed up. We're ready to go. And now I'm gonna give you maybe a big secret, okay? One of my own personal additions to creating the best ever bark, a delicious flavor. So get yourself a little bowl. First things first, Traeger coffee rub. This stuff it's the bomb, okay? It's so good. It does not make your brisket taste like an espresso What coffee rub does is it actually enhances the irons and the lovely, lovely flavors that are in the meat itself. Next, tried and true goodness, okay? If you have not gotten this rub and you love steak, you love burgers, you love anything beefy goodness, get you some prime rib rub. This stuff is always in my cupboard. I use it weekly. I just love this stuff, okay? And you ready for this? Here is my secret ingredient. It's not so secret because it's one of the original things that I added to my 180 brisket recipes. This is mushroom powder. Mushroom powder is an umami bomb, okay? It brings everybody to the table. One of the great things about umami flavors from this mushroom is that it just enhances the beef so much. The combination of these three together is stellar, okay? So, where do you get this stuff? Well, you can actually buy dried mushrooms. You can grind them up. You can buy it powdered already. It's completely up to you. Porcini, shiitake, whatever type of mushroom powder you can get your hands on, they all work, okay? But here's the ratio. I use about 50 to 60% prime rib rub, about 25% of the coffee rub, and about 20% to 25% mushroom powder. Get a spoon and mix this all up thoroughly. All right, brisket trimmed. Notice the brisket is sitting fat side up because this is the side that is gonna go down on the grill. Now, don't come at me, people. I'm over it, okay? If you want to trim in a different way, go ahead, it's your house. If you want to eat all this fat, go ahead, it's your house. But you actually can't deny the science that much of this hard fat that's right here will not render into the brisket. So when we flip the brisket over on the grill and we put it fat cap down, one of the things is that we're gonna maximize bark on the protein side. Now, I have friends in Texas that cook their briskets completely opposite. They like their results. There is nothing wrong with it, okay? This brisket is gonna go on the grill, fat cap down. Now, it's got a little bit of surface moisture, but I'm gonna introduce something to make the rub stick just a touch more, okay? And you might be shocked, but this is apple juice. That's it. It's not hard. The reason I like to use apple juice is that it introduces a surface sugar. One of the things we're doing with brisket is we're caramelizing the surface with the rubs, with the salt, with the myoglobin, which is all that proteiny water that's in the brisket itself, and of course the introduction of wood-fired smoke from this amazing grill behind me, the Woodridge Pro. And so by introducing a little bit of surface sugar, you actually encourage that bark development. There's a really fancy French term for it. It's called the Maillard principle, okay? It's the caramelization of sugars. So we got a little bit of a spritz. We got a little bit of rub. And remember, this is the flavor profile I like. You could still go through all of the trimming techniques I teach today, and maybe you have another rub at home that you like. There's nothing wrong with that. Before I flip it over, I don't think you need to use mustard. I don't think you need to use anything else. Give it a nice little tap. Here's how you tell if it sticks. I think we're good. Flip it over. I go a little lighter on the fat side than I do on the meat side. And notice I'm making sure to get all of the edges. Take your time with this. You can put this wrapped in the fridge overnight, covered in plastic wrap, or you can do what I do, just go right to the grill. The key is this. This is still ice cold. I always want to put my briskets, my big pieces of meat on the grill ice cold because I want to maximize the amount of time that I can build bark. Now, as you can see, I'm just gently patting down. I'm not grinding it in there, just gently patting it down. And then I'm gonna grab one of the most essential tools for me. So I've got a meter probe here. I've got the application on my phone. And for me, this is actually where I put the probe. When it comes to a meter probe, you wanna go into the thickest part of the flat. This part here has a lot of fat. so it's very forgiving. This part here, much leaner. So we want to pay attention to the flats temperature more than anything else. So you want to go down about the middle, nice and thick, on an angle, and there we go. We're in. Brisket is ready to go. All right, so we are ready to go to the grill. The grill is running at 225 degrees. And before we go there, I just got to touch on this topic. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Right now you're in my house, okay? So basically, when it comes to pellet selection for brisket, I love mesquite, I love oak, I love hickory, but I also love a mixture of mesquite and cherry together. Yeah, that's right. I actually make some of my own blends at my own house. When you're at your house, use your own favorite blend of pellets, but definitely, if you like mesquite and brisket is excellent, and hickory and brisket is excellent. So, let's go to the grill with this baby. We are set at 225 degrees and we're ready to go. She is a long one. You've already got one just about halfway done. I'm gonna give it a little spritz. Key reminder, every 45 minutes to an hour, you wanna just go in and lightly spritz your brisket. Smoke is water soluble, so you wanna encourage as much of that smoke to get in the meat. And remember, because we're working on the Woodridge Pro, we've got that beautiful clean smoke from the downward draft system. That is key. Clean, delicious, wood-fired smoke that doesn't taste like acrid bitterness. I like clean smoke. Okay, everybody, my cutting board is clean, my station is clean. I've got some hot gloves on here with the nitrile gloves over neat. I'm already thinking about bourbon shit. All right, let's try that again, shall we? Got the nitriles over them. The brisket's been going at 225 degrees. It's now 170 degrees internal temperature, and now it's time to wrap our brisket. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to grab some heavy duty foil. Now, let me explain something to you, everybody. You could use paper if you want. You can use foil if you want. They're going to give you two different results. This is a beginner, kind of like one of the brisket recipes that's tried and true. It's a guaranteed win on moisture, okay? And so I often recommend that for the first few briskets that you ever cook, go to foil first. Here's why. Foil doesn't breathe, so it literally captures all the moisture into the package itself. Traeger butcher paper, pink paper, peach paper, whatever you want to call it, actually has porous surfaces on that paper itself. And so it actually lets a lot more air out, breathe. And I think for the first few briskets that you do at home, go to the foil side first, get used to trimming a brisket, get used to looking at a brisket as well, and seeing how the meat develops and formulates the bark on the outside. But for today, we're gonna be using foil. Heavy duty, wide foil. If you plan on being in the barbecue game, if you plan on wrapping some briskets, some pork butts, some things, go get you a big box, notice how wide this is, of heavy duty foil. And always take out more than you think you need. All right, foil ready to go. Let's go get a brisket, everybody. You want to carefully take your brisket, put it on your foil. You're gonna take your meter out. Just put it to the side for now. Look at that beautiful bark that's developed. And so now it's time to wrap it in foil. I'm not going to be adding anything to this brisket wrap because this is a really high quality prime brisket. If you're using a lower grade of brisket, if the brisket doesn't have very much marbling in it, if the brisket looks like super dry and you're worried that you're gonna make, jerky instead of brisket slices, I would recommend you add about a cup of low sodium beef broth. And if it's super dry, even a couple of tablespoons of butter. So get it on the foil, get the foil pulled over, just like that. Nice wide turns, just like that. And every brisket's gonna be wrapped a little differently, okay? Here's another key point. When you're wrapping brisket, you always wanna wrap the foil upwards, not downwards. The reason you wanna go upwards with it, to capture any moisture. This is gonna start rendering out some of the lovely juices that are in this brisket. So if you wrap it downwards, you could potentially lose them. Now, let's go back to our meter. One of the key things is This is one of the ultimate tools for us to know when this brisket is done. We're gonna take the guesswork out. Take your probe, feel back into that thickest part of the brisket flat. Once again, go back in on an angle. I'm not stressing out about that tiny little hole that's there, and you shouldn't either. Back to the grill. Go to the grill, turn it up to 275. $275 degrees, put that baby back on, and now it's just a waiting game for it to get to between 204 to 208 degrees, or another indication is when you put the probe in, it feels like it's going into room temperature butter. There should be next to no resistance, and let's get to that stage quickly. Now magically, we have a swap ready. We've let it come up to that 204 degrees mark, and it's time for me to get that one off the grill now. This brisket is fully cooked. 100% this brisket is cooked. We could dive right in, or we could hold us back a little bit, give us a little bit of restraint, and rest it for a better end result. So, in order to rest meat properly, you need to do something. First and foremost, take that probe out. Secondly, right now, this brisket just hit 204 degrees. If I was to wrap it up nice and tight, throw it in a cooler, and let it rest, what's gonna happen for the first little while, it's gonna continue to cook. It's gonna continue to give it a lot of steam in there. It's gonna continue to braise in that liquid that's been extracted from the brisket. So in order for us to bring the core temperature down just a little bit, what I want you to do is just vent it out ever so slightly, okay? Leave this for a good 10 minutes, maybe even 15. The internal temperature needs to drop to about 175 to 180 degrees again. The reason is we want to be able to actually slice this brisket, okay? And in order to do that effectively, we need to get some of that aggressive heat off that brisket and let it rest a little bit first before we go to the cooler for a full-on rest. All right, so we are ready to wrap this entire brisket up and get it for a full-on rest in a cooler. One of the things is it's come down in temperature. We've got no more aggressive heat. So we're going to rewrap this. I always recommend using a really good cooler. I have this one at home. This is what I actually use at home to hold my briskets, my pork butts. You'll notice that there's a lot of liquid in this, so I don't want to just dump this into the cooler. I'm going to show you something I do at home. I have got a really good sized box of food grade plastic wrap. And the reason I do that is that now that we've come to that temperature of about 170 degrees, 175 degrees, one of the things is I want to hold that temperature as much as possible. So get your plastic wrap out. Take your brisket, put your brisket on the plastic wrap, and wrap it a few times. Turn it, wrap the other end as well. Honest to good gravy, it's always the plastic wrap boxes that are evil. We all know this, it's true. And then we're gonna call that done because I don't wanna fight with this box anymore, to be perfectly honest. All right, how long do you rest this for? A minimum of 1 hour. This brisket needs to stay above 165 degrees. For me personally, the baseline cutoff though is always gonna be 145 degrees, but I prefer 165. So, of course, I just happen to have one ready. So let's swap them out. When you put your brisket in this to rest, I wanna give you another piece of advice. To hold the temperature as close as possible, you may wanna put some towels on top of this. If there's a lot of air in there, it's gonna cool down faster. So you kinda wanna insulate the brisket itself. Also, just a future relationship tip, ask for permission for whomever is in charge of towels at your house. Okay, because I'm warning you right now, they're always gonna smell like brisket or barbecue in general. Here we've got one wrapped up right here. We're gonna swap it out for this one, put this away. We're gonna grab some towels. We're gonna seal this up and it's gonna rest for a minimum of 1 hour. All that work, all that time, and it comes down to this. Simple trimming, seasoning, a great grill, And remember, we did this on the Woodridge today, the Woodridge Pro. So lots of great bark development. You guys got to see that all the way through. Now, I'm excited to dig into this. We're gonna open up this gorgeous brisket. And for people that say that you lose the bark due to foil, no, you don't, okay? The Woodridge gave this incredible bark coverage on this brisket. Look at that bark, everybody. It's spectacular. Now this brisket was trimmed exactly like I had the other one. We've got so much delicious liquid in here. And remember, we didn't put anything in the wrap. These are just the brisket juices that are coming out. I have this amazing brisket sitting here, just waiting to be cut. It's a messy job, but somebody's got to do it. I've got a big sharp knife. I've got a beautiful cooked brisket in front of me. I've got to show you guys what I consider the beauty shot. I vehemently hate all videos that squeeze the meat on briskets. If you do your brisket right, there is absolutely no need to squeeze your brisket. So, beautiful cut, right in between the point and the flat. And here's what I want to show you guys. No squeezing necessary. It's succulent, it's moist, it's got a beautiful smoke ring on it. That is a properly cooked brisket. No squeezing needed ever. Once you have it like that, take your knife. And this is the shot that everybody wants to see. This is the cut that everybody wants to see. We have a beautiful brisket, and there's the hang. Oh my God, look at how easy this was to do. You don't need to overcomplicate brisket if you've got a great grill to cook it on. And there is a key in all of this. The Woodridge Pro gave it the beautiful bark, gave us the beautiful color. Most importantly, above all, it's all about that flavor. So, somebody's got to eat the brisket, and it's going to be me. Succulent, wood-fired, luscious beef, deliciously simple to make, and really easy on a Traeger grill. So this is my recipe for a barbecue brisket. Really simple from start to finish, from trimming to seasoning. And this is a great, amazing result on the all-new Woodridge Pro. Remember to like, subscribe, check out the recipe below, and make sure you sign up for all those Traeger socials so you can make this stuff too and look like a rock star in your backyard.